How on earth are you supposed to defeat something like this? How are you even supposed to fight it? I feel like this would be a perfect Lovecraft scenario. Normal person curious about greater knowledge, meets a being that's beyond this world and beyond comprehension, stares at said being, loses sanity. What's up, everybody? I'm IGP, and welcome back to Hello Neighbor. Today's the day, guys. Ever since Alpha 4 came out, everyone's been like,
IGP, please hack the code. If you hack the code, there's probably secrets in there.
And while we aren't going to be decompiling or hacking code because that's technically illegal, we are, however, going to be unpacking the packed files of the Unreal Engine build for Hello Neighbor. Now, I was granted permission to do this by the author of the game, so we're all good. I'm gonna have to say it. Spoiler warning, if you don't want to find out what could potentially be in future builds or how the game is going to play out, click away. Links in the description below. Some other stuff from Hello Neighbor in the current build that you can watch to get your Hello Neighbor fix. Now that it's been said, let's go ahead and talk about the game files, the assets that were used in the current build and some that were left over. See, in Alpha 3, we actually did this exact thing. That's one of the reasons why we were able to play the Fear Darkness map before it ever even came out in Alpha 4. We already knew what we were doing because we've done this before. Anyway, enough yapping. So this is as much hacking as we're going to be doing because I'm not a hacker, so I can't do all that much. What we're going to be using is something called UModel, which allows us to view some models and assets that are in the packed version of the game, which we have unpacked and now have access to. In addition to that, we can look at different folders and kind of get a good idea of what is to come. So the main thing I want to focus on, which is one of the most interesting ones for me, is this folder right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's called Final Battle. Now, as the game's been developed, we all kind of noticed that there's a more chapter-based or mission-based theme going on in Hello Neighbor, whereas when you originally had it, it was just, hey, break into the house, get to the basement, that's your goal. And you can do it by any means necessary. But now that we're starting to see these extra maps, completing goals, getting abilities, and then seeing that we're going to use those abilities to advance in the basement in this current build, we can assume that there's eventually going to be a whole linear mission-based story. And of course, having a Final Battle folder would make sense if that's the case. Now, you can already see there are a lot of assets here. Unfortunately, we can't view blueprint assets. I don't know how that works in Unreal when you're developing, but these are blueprints and don't have any specific objects that we can view attached to them. So these particular assets we can't view. However, we can get around that and view the mesh. And we'll get to that in a second. But if we open up Final Battle, we'll see that there are two sections. There's one where it seems like you might be fighting the neighbor. There's the big neighbor, which is the one we saw in the pre-alpha, I think, where you would wake up in your house, you're dreaming clearly, and the big neighbor just leans down and reaches in and grabs you somehow. I don't know if it's going to be a scenario where you are fighting the neighbor or the neighbor is going to be kind of a stand-in or a watcher or a passerby. Now, these two assets in particular are kind of weird. One is the Thing, right? We all know what the Thing is. I've already showed it. That thing, the thing that is seemingly controlling the neighbor, seems to be everywhere. It's pulsating, it's grotesque, it's scary, and it also highly resembles the Shadow. It looks like a 2D version or a very low-res 2D version of the Thing. Again, we'll get to proving that in just a second, but what also is weird is that there's a kid here. Now, this might be a dream sequence of sorts. Maybe the Final Battle is something where you have to fight this thing off as a kid. Now, I'm not going to try and theory craft too much, at least not with the depths of the story, more so of what's going to be taking place based on the concrete evidence I have at hand. The kid could also be someone you're rescuing, because in Alpha 2, we definitely heard some kid screaming and the neighbor telling the kid to be quiet. So who knows? But also in this battle, it seems that there's a lot of different stuff. See, we might think these are two separate things, but again, these seem to all be assets and things that you'll be using to fight, which would be interesting because there hasn't really been much of a fight mechanic except for the gun, which doesn't really do much to the neighbor anyways. It's like little Nerf darts. But you'll have access to what seems to be a giant gun, fireworks, a bow and arrow, potentially fighting off whatever is thrown at you, which might be the giant thing, or maybe the regular size thing, who knows. And the neighbor could just be a big neighbor to add to the creepiness, Silent Hill type room that you might be in fighting. Anyway, enough talking. Let's go ahead and show the assets for all this stuff. So you can actually go down here to objects and then meshes. Now the folder is organized to show the base asset and some of the animations that come with it. So we can check all of that out at once. I'm just going to highlight it all and open it. This is the bow that I have no idea what the use is for. More than likely to fight the final fight, whatever it may be. And it's untextured. Unfortunately, I don't have the textures. Either that or it's not locating them correctly to be able to display them. In fact, I'm not even sure if those even exist. We can actually go to flat view here and type in bow to see if something does. And see here, doesn't look like there's any textures. At least it's not named bow, if there is. So what we can do with UModel is also, in addition to viewing the model itself, we can actually go through its animations, which this is its idle animation. The next one would be its idle 1, which I don't know what that means. Drawn back, or ready, as it says in the bottom left corner. If you guys aren't watching on 1440p, I recommend doing that if you can, just because it's going to be a lot easier to read this stuff, by the way. I actually can't change the size of the text on here, so sorry about that. And this is the shooting animation, which we can repeat over and over. Basic stuff, right? Bow and air. I don't know how this is going to work. It seems more like it says big, right? Big bow. I'm wondering if maybe you have to pull this back by some other means that might not be conventional. So that's the bow. We also have fireworks listed in here, and it did say big fireworks before, so let's open that up. And this is definitely something I haven't seen in game yet, so I'm assuming it's not used. But this is a giant firework, untextured. This is its standing idle animation. That is it being fired. That is it being fired off into a crazy distance. There we go. So it spins out of control, then disappears. And that is essentially it. So this is the soda bottle, which was also listed in the battle folder here. Has an idle animation, then it has a strike animation, which is actually kind of weird. It seems like you knock the cap off of a carbonated beverage and it shoots out, which would be what you use to fight. Now, this is interesting because it almost makes it seem like you're fighting as the kid, using very weird techniques to fight off a giant thing or a giant neighbor, like soda pop and a bow and arrow, fireworks. You get to use a gun, apparently. That's what's listed in the folder, but I'm not sure to what extent you could, and even if you can, it is, again, basically a Nerf gun. It's not really a real gun. They're seemingly pitting you against someone who is a murderer, someone who takes hostages, keeps them prisoner. We don't know what the neighbor exactly does. We know it's sinister in nature. It may not even be his fault, but regardless, you're pitting us against, you're making us go to a gunfight and bringing a toothpick, basically. Which, toothpicks can hurt. Don't get me wrong. I've had some traumatic experiences with toothpicks. I don't know how it will handle against an otherworldly entity. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have been eyeballing this the whole time, and I love dragging it out. Sweat your asses off in anticipation, right? Because it's the most anticipating thing you've ever seen in your life so far, right? I don't know, it just seems rather peculiar that it looks almost identical. Okay, not almost identical. This is a 3D version of what we've seen. It just doesn't have the hands and legs, right? It seems to be cut off, but that was just a shadow. You understand that the idea behind the shadow thing that was originally in Alpha 2? Whatever Alpha it was, I actually don't remember now, but you go down towards the ending, the neighbor's crying in a seemingly beautifully lit home, and then you look through the keyhole in one of the doors, and there is a, shadow being casted. Now, it's not the shadow texture, it's a light shining onto that shadow texture, and then being lit up on the wall, and of course it's a shadow, so it's supposed to be distorted. So it seems like they made the 2D texture to distort and get the shadow to their liking, not actually be exactly what the texture looks like. It's manipulated to have the shadow projected in a certain way. With that being said, and I know we have the guy out in the middle of the woods and stuff in broad daylight. Honestly, I think that was just put there as an Easter egg for you to find. But we do see it at the end in the basement, and again, it's illuminated by light, so it's going to be distorted, and it's supposed to give off this image of something, but not necessarily what. The point to take note is on the shadow, you can see the hair kind of looks like, what Wayne Static's hair used to look like. Rest in peace, dude. It had that like Static Shock, Static X type look, and this is very reminiscent of that. It looks exactly like it. Now, this particular texture obviously is it's not pulsating like the other one is. In both the pantry and the Golden Apple cutscene, you can see him walk by and then stand at the door when the neighbor turns around. It's pulsating, and it looks like it's this model right here. So that's the thing. That's the thing model. Now, we have some animations with it, which are actually kind of weird because they don't match the current model. So we're not going to see this particular thing animate. We will see some animations what it might be in the future. So this is the thing. This is the blocky version of the thing. I guess it's called the thing test. So I guess this is just trying to get the motions in order before it gets modeled correctly. I don't know if it's going to be the thing or the shadow, or if it might be the neighbor, because it does have kind of a bulky body, you know? Maybe the giant neighbor is actually what you're going to be fighting, and the thing is just something you're going to see off in the distance. Here are the animations. Very simple stuff. We have one attack. Boom. That right hook. Let's see that again. Boom. Right hook. Well, it's more of a jab. Very poorly formed jab, but it also looks like a right hook. Also very poor form. Attack number 2, bam, that's a jab. That's a jab and a half. Look at that guy. He reached. Let's do that again. That's good. That's a good jab. Look at that. There's that nice little left hook now. I guess we're gonna have the jab. Ooh, he actually jabs outwards, it seems. That doesn't look the same as this one, does it? No. Okay, so there's 2 different areas. Now, what it seems like he's doing is reaching into certain compartments, almost? It says attack, it doesn't say punch or anything. And attack 5 is, like, a level above them. So I'm thinking it's gonna be a giant version of the thing, like the one we saw in the closet, or the pantry. And we're gonna have to use, like, the giant bow, gun, soda bottle, and stuff to fight it, and go to different levels, maybe? Might be a multiple level battle. Kind of like, there have been tons of bosses in the past, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank on which ones it could be. Anyway, can you imagine fighting that thing? Seriously. This thing. This disgusting, pulsating mess of matter. Well, how do I fight this? How would I know how to fight this? And if I know how to fight this, how come the neighbor couldn't fight it? I honestly hope the neighbor's not innocent. It would kind of lose all its value to me, just because I've grown to hate him. I don't think I could like the neighbor. Unless he starts crying like he was before, and we learn a very sad story, like, you know, his family got, you know, into an accident or something, and then I'm like, all right, I'm drawing tears for this dude. So here I've opened up a material. This is what the materials generally look like. They kind of just wrap around, just like textures, around the models. This one is the shadow. This is what I believe is either being casted onto the model of the thing in the pantry, or it's being casted onto the wall, but that seems like it's more of a cooked like shadow or light mapping than anything else. Because if you notice, the shadow isn't moving with it, so it's not a, you know, dynamic light shadow, or at least it doesn't seem like it. Maybe the pulsating part of him isn't actually casting shadows, but still. I don't know much about materials and normal mapping and all this stuff, and textures and wrapping up on models and stuff, but I'm gonna try to increase the gamma. Let's see if we can see what's actually on here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it actually kind of looks, and I know that's really bad. I'll turn it off when I'm done, but that kind of looks like the weird shadow thing, right? That kind of looks like the shadow thing in the map of the pantry, or the Fear Darkness map. This is in there, so I think I was right, and I can say that I was right when I say that the shadow thing we've all seen since Alpha 2, 3, whatever, is the thing that we see. We're calling it the thing now because we know what it's called. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Let's turn that disgusting gamma off. Anyway, so those are the models and details that we can find for what seems to be a final battle with the neighbor and this thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And of course, there's a lot of other stuff. I know you guys have probably been looking at this one right here, but we're gonna save that for another video. I've been doing this for some time now. It's hard to make this kind of stuff work to show you guys. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Like, share, favorite, and subscribe if you haven't already to keep up to date with all my latest videos. Hope I didn't spoil too much for you guys, but if you enjoyed it, let me know. Thanks again for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.